As you probably know, analog horror is a genre that has unsettled millions with its eerie atmosphere. These stories, often hidden in old videotapes, lost broadcasts, or corrupted files, introduce us to universes where the rules of our reality bend and break. But beyond its unsettling aesthetic, what truly makes these stories unforgettable are the threats their characters face. In analog horror, humans don't just confront the unknown. They often find themselves completely powerless against horrors they can neither comprehend nor control. To better understand the scale of the threats present in these universes, I've used a classification system that some of you might recognize. This will help us gauge just how dangerous these entities and events really are. The system consists of 5 levels, each defining the impact and reach of these threats. First, we have Wolf level, the lowest tier. Here we categorize the appearance of a being or group of beings that pose a problem, but whose impact remains limited and manageable. Next is Tiger level. At this stage, the threat escalates to something that endangers the lives of many people, something broader and deadlier than just an isolated incident. Then we reach Demon level. This is where things get serious. A threat at this level is capable of endangering an entire city or even destroying its infrastructure. Above that, we have Dragon level. The threat now reaches devastating proportions, capable of affecting multiple cities at once and posing a national level danger. And finally, at the very top, we have God level, the highest tier, representing threats that could lead to the extinction of humanity itself. Here we encounter entities or events that not only defy logic but also threaten the very existence of our world. With this system, we'll be able to analyze the threats humans face within a specific analog horror universe and determine the scale of their impact. How close do these stories come to total annihilation? That's what we'll be exploring today. Before we begin, I'd like to thank everyone who responded to the pinned comment in the last video and for all the support you always give me. Remember, if you want to be featured in the next video, just reply to the pinned comment where you'll find the following question. What other analog horror universe would you like to see in the next video? All of your suggestions are taken into account for future installments of this series, so you know what to do. Without further ado, don't forget to leave your precious like and subscribe to help the channel grow and reach more people. Every like is one more coin to escape poverty. And if you're not sure what to comment, just type meow in the comment section and I'll give you a heart in return. Comments are super important and help the video a lot, so don't forget to leave yours. Welcome to more analog horror universes you definitely wouldn't survive in.
Gemini Home Entertainment.
We're starting off strong. In this analog horror universe, humanity and all life on Earth is under the dominion of a conscious, intelligent, arrogant, and malevolent planet known as the Iris, named for its unsettling resemblance to an eye. It is a cosmic parasite, just another anomaly in the vastness of the universe, whose sole purpose is to mutate and infest everything in its path. And unfortunately, its journey has led it straight into our solar system, where its first victim was Neptune. However, its true obsession became fixated on a small, blue planet teeming with life. From that moment on, Earth's fate was sealed. Through Neptune, the Iris unleashed a colossal blast aimed at our planet to commence its invasion. Thousands, perhaps millions of parasites were sent as extensions of its own entity, carrying out its objective. In the process, it infected and mutated other planets in the solar system. All the while, this sadistic planet watches with delight, reveling in the suffering it causes, laughing, mocking us humans as we await our inevitable end, while life on Earth and its ecosystems are slowly and inexorably destroyed and reshaped. Among the horrors spawned by the Iris, the woodcrawlers stand out. Massive, spider-like alien creatures built to hunt humans and transform them into fake people. These beings appear human at first glance, but their nature has been corrupted. Their bodies have been mutated by the Iris, making their movements unnaturally stiff and rigid. Their primary function is to act as bait, emitting harrowing cries for help to lure new victims into their doom. Then there are the gardeners, colossal entities tasked with mutating the planet by spreading spores of the iris, creating more creatures like themselves and accelerating Earth's transformation. But it doesn't stop there. There is also the Wretch, a grizzly bear grotesquely mutated into a monstrous abomination that never ceases to evolve, absorbing the bodies of multiple humans as it grows. And perhaps the most terrifying of all, the Roots, tiny infectious agents responsible for spreading the deep root disease. The infection begins with bulbous growths on the skin, resembling blisters, which eventually expand into roots. These roots then develop into tendrils that relentlessly creep toward the victim's bones, where they start to branch out and fuse with the skeletal structure. At this stage, the victim becomes completely immobilized, transforming into a nature's mockery, a grotesque mass of flesh and roots, an entity capable of absorbing humans and further spreading the disease. Eventually, the infected body decomposes entirely, releasing something unknown from within. What's most disturbing is that victims of deep root disease remain fully conscious, even in the final stages of their transformation. Though they lose the ability to communicate normally, they can still repeat phrases they heard in the past, trapped in an unfathomable torment. The iris and its endless horrors pose an absolute and unstoppable threat to humanity. Its sole purpose is to annihilate all life on the planet before mutating it beyond recognition, and nothing seems capable of stopping it. The way it carries out its destruction is so horrifying that, in my opinion, it stands as one of the most terrifying entities in analog horror, and its influence extends far beyond Earth. Its impact is interplanetary. For that reason, Gemini Home Entertainment rightfully reaches God level, without a doubt.
Foxymations, analog horror.
The analog horror universe created by Foxymations is composed of various fairy tales, all connected by a common, eerie, and terrifying narrative thread, one that also ties together the same looming dangers. First, we have the wolf, a manifestation of pure evil. Before becoming a monstrous creature, the wolf was once a human child who suffered relentless bullying and abuse. His tormentors destroyed his home, the only place where he felt safe, shattering his psyche in the process. However, instead of succumbing to despair, this event transformed him into a cruel and vengeful being. From that moment on, his thirst for revenge drove him to commit a massacre, and rather than feeling any remorse, he found satisfaction in killing. With each life he took, the darkness within him grew stronger, but his desire to inflict suffering did not stop there. Killing was no longer enough. He wanted to become an unstoppable force, one that would spread terror for all eternity. To achieve this, he sought out the witch, who granted him supernatural powers in exchange for his soul. As part of the ritual, he slaughtered a real wolf and, from that moment forward, assumed his new identity, an immortal being with inhuman strength and an insatiable thirst for blood. However, the witch warned him of one crucial weakness: fire. It was the only thing capable of ending his existence. This creature doesn't just kill, he plays with his victims, ensuring they experience the highest possible level of fear and despair before he finishes them off. His sadism is evident in every encounter. And as if that weren't enough, once he claims a life, he traps his victims' souls within himself, a sort of limbo where they remain in eternal torment, unable to find peace. Fortunately, the third little pig, with the help of his brother's souls and the others trapped within the wolf, was able to learn the psychotic beast's only weakness. In an act of sacrifice, he put an end to the murderous creature. At last, the trapped souls were set free, finding the peace they had longed for. As for the wolf, his charred body lay lifeless while his soul emerged, fully accepting his fate. And yet, he felt no remorse. If anything, he would do it all over again if given the chance. But this is far from the end of the story. The witch plays a far greater role in this dark tale. After all, she was the mastermind behind it all. Her true goal was to harvest as many souls as possible through the wolf, ultimately becoming unstoppable. The witch possesses arcane knowledge that allows her to grant immortality in exchange for souls. She can manipulate people's perceptions, as she did with Gretel, creating hallucinations of Hansel to lure her into her house. She also has the ability to control lifeless bodies and can only be killed in a very specific manner, by piercing her head, her right shoulder, and her heart in that exact order. At first glance, these might seem like significant threats, but in comparison to others, they are not that impressive. I mean, in the series, only a few forest animals, Little Red Riding Hood's family, Hansel, and the 3 little pigs fall victim to these entities before they are eventually dealt with. And that's another thing, the means of eliminating them are relatively simple once you discover their weaknesses. You'd figure it out eventually, as the souls trapped within the wolf would tell you. As for the witch, well, just fill her with bullets and one of them will hit the mark. Their potential impact is limited to the lives of a considerable number of people and creatures, but does not extend to highly populated areas. For that reason, I would classify their threat level as tiger level. Additionally, they don't even induce a widespread fear significant enough to rank them any higher.
Winter of 83.
In the universe of Winter of 83, most of the residents of Fawn Circle, Minnesota, mysteriously vanished. The cause? A snowstorm. But not just any snowstorm, because where would the fun be in that? This was a threat born from an intelligent bacterial colony known as the life form. These bacteria were part of a government experiment under Project Freezing Rain, overseen by Dr. Robert Chandra. However, after escaping from their containment within Scott Mansion, the bacteria unleashed a supernatural blizzard over Fawn Circle, trapping and assimilating its inhabitants. The life form exhibits remarkable intelligence, rapidly learning to communicate with humans and developing a god complex, seeing itself as superior and believing that humanity must be absorbed into its being. By manipulating signals and recordings, it lures people into the snow, mimicking voices to tempt victims out of their homes. However, its methods are somewhat primitive, as it repeatedly uses the same phrases, mixing words it picks up from others. But it doesn't stop there. Its ability to create eerie snow monsters with the faces of real people adds another layer of horror, making it even more unsettling. Despite this, the lifeform has a major weakness. Its influence is restricted to a specific geographical area due to its reliance on UHF signals to sustain itself. Additionally, its control is temporary. Once the weather began to warm, the snow eventually melted, taking its grip on Fawn Circle with it. Despite this limitation, the attack had devastating consequences for both the town and its residents. And while the snow eventually melted, freeing Fawn Circle from its grasp, the danger isn't truly over. The lifeform was never fully eradicated, and a post-credit scene hints that the threat may re-emerge elsewhere, perhaps in Topeka, Kansas. While undeniably dangerous, the lifeform's reach is limited by both geography and specific climate conditions. Furthermore, if the residents had been aware of the threat in advance, relatively simple precautions, such as stockpiling supplies and staying indoors until the snow had disappeared, could have significantly reduced the risk. With all this in mind, the threat posed in Winter of 83 would be classified as demon level, based on the events of the series. However, with proper precautions, its danger level could be downgraded to tiger level with relative ease.
The Mandela Catalogue.
The story of the Mandela Catalogue takes place in an alternate universe where a malevolent entity has taken God's place, as suggested by the title of the first episode and hinted at throughout the series. This entity is none other than Satan, also known as Lucifer, the fallen angel. After seemingly getting rid of the archangel Gabriel, Satan takes his form, becoming an exact copy to deceive humanity. This false angel descends to earth right before the birth of Jesus Christ, aiming to stop it, while proclaiming himself as the one true savior of mankind, the only deity worthy of worship. But, as expected given his nature, his real intentions are the exact opposite. He understands humanity perfectly, its greatest loves, but more importantly, its deepest fears. and fear is his most powerful weapon, one he uses to torment and break God's most cherished creation. The series never outright confirms whether God was actually destroyed by Satan, but there are plenty of clues suggesting that's the case. However, one key detail makes it pretty obvious. While Satan is powerful, there's no way he could have taken down an archangel loyal to God under normal circumstances. Archangels exist under his protection and power. But what if God was no longer there? Exactly. The outcome would be completely different. And that's exactly what happened. With God out of the picture, Satan was able to eliminate Gabriel and take his place without any resistance. So that brings up an even bigger question. How did Satan manage to destroy God? We'll get to that later. On top of all that, Satan has the ability to create demonic entities known as alternates. These creatures have existed for millennia, ever since the false angel appeared, and they serve as the main antagonists of this analog horror series. They function as a collective consciousness with one ultimate goal: the eradication of humanity. Alternates take humanoid forms, but they usually have unnatural or impossible physical traits. When they target a victim, they put them through a process that triggers MAD, a perception disorder that drives them into despair and, ultimately,
suicide.
The exact methods they use aren't entirely clear, but what is known is that they exploit their victims' deepest fears, showing them visions or messages that push them to a breaking point. Their success rate is terrifying, 97%. Additionally, it has been demonstrated that they are capable of using brute force to eliminate their victims. There are different types of alternates, each with its own characteristics. Doppelgangers, perfect or nearly identical copies of a person, making them almost impossible to tell apart from the original. Flawed impersonators, defective imitations with exaggerated or incomplete features, disproportionate limbs, faceless heads, or even reversed anatomy. Tulpas, one of the most terrifying types. These alternates are born from a person's imagination, usually that of a child. It's unclear whether they can only manifest under specific conditions or if they can appear at any moment. However, they're believed to be able to manifest through TVs and mirrors. And that's not all. Alternates can mimic voices, music, and radio signals to trick their victims, and due to their demonic nature, they are also extremely difficult to destroy. But there's still one type of alternate we haven't talked about: the unspeakable, a category that only the false prophet falls under. That's right. Satan himself is considered an alternate, since the ability to impersonate other beings originates from him. Why is he called the unspeakable? Well, the saying speaks for itself. Speak of the devil, and he shall appear. Now, back to the original question. It's not far-fetched to think that, with this power, Satan could have taken on God's form and, in doing so, stolen his power, allowing him to destroy him. With God gone, eliminating Gabriel and taking his place was effortless. At that point, no other being could even compare to him. It would be like comparing a grain of sand to a mountain, and even that wouldn't be enough to capture the difference. However, despite having power equal to God's, Satan doesn't seem to be using it to immediately wipe out humanity. Instead, he seems to prefer leading people astray, tormenting them, and making them suffer slowly. In fact, his influence, and that of his alternates, seems to be limited within Mandela County and its surrounding areas. That being said, there's nothing stopping it from spreading to the rest of the world. And if that were to happen, humanity would be facing an apocalyptic nightmare unlike anything before, one ruled by chaos and despair. In fact, if he wanted to, Satan could wipe out humanity in an instant with his current power. If we go strictly by what the series shows, and ignore any speculation, the Mandela Catalogue would be classified as a demon-level threat, since its reach appears to be restricted to Mandela County and nearby areas. However, it's hard to ignore everything we've gone over. This isn't just some powerful entity causing trouble. It's a being that has reached absolute power. If it hasn't destroyed humanity yet, it's because it simply doesn't want to, not because it can't. That being said, this is just my take on it, and I could be wrong. The presence or absence of God in this analog horror universe directly affects its classification. There's always the possibility that God still exists, but that Satan managed to incapacitate him in some way, overpowering him. If that theory is true, Satan's abilities would be significantly weaker. However, he'd still be able to wreak havoc on a global scale, just in a more indirect way. Beyond everything already mentioned, Satan is an immortal being who has existed since the earliest days of the universe and continues to exist to this day, unaffected by time or disease. He is the ultimate manipulator, and he likely possesses knowledge of the universe that is far beyond human comprehension. His power is so immense that he was able to rip out Dave Lee's eyes and make his brain explode without even touching him or making the slightest effort. He can also teleport anywhere he wants, and his mere presence can drastically alter the environment, plunging the sky into total darkness and even making the stars disappear from the night sky. If you still think a being like this wouldn't be capable of wiping us out completely, then I don't know what else you need to see to convince you otherwise. All things considered, and taking some liberties with the interpretation, I'd classify the universe of the Mandela Catalogue as a god-level threat, though still below Gemini home entertainment. The difference is that in Gemini, the absolute and definitive nature of its threat is made explicitly clear, whereas in Mandela, it remains somewhat ambiguous. That doesn't necessarily mean Mandela's threat is lesser. On the contrary, in my opinion, it's not.
The Winterland Incident.
In this analog horror universe, the greatest source of danger lies in the sinister events connected to the entertainment company Winterballs Entertainment. Initially founded by Walter Graves and Freddie Burton, this company presents itself as an innocent, family-friendly business using restaurants, theme parks, and animatronics to attract both children and adults. However, this wholesome image quickly begins to crumble, revealing the dark reality hidden behind its walls. Walter Graves is, without a doubt, the main antagonist of this narrative. His manipulative, cold, and calculating personality, along with his clear parallels to William Afton from Five Nights at Freddy's, make him an especially sinister figure. Walter has not only proven himself capable of committing extremely cruel acts, but also of covering his tracks with cunning, shifting suspicion onto innocent people. Evidence strongly suggests that Walter was directly involved in multiple deaths and disappearances, including the suspicious death of Freddie Burton, his original partner, and the gruesome disappearance and murder of Helena Mandela. Walter seems to have a twisted fascination with death, suffering, and the disturbing idea of trapping human souls inside his animatronics. One such animatronic is Polar Pooh, a bear-like figure that claimed the life of a security guard on their very first night on the job. Inside this animatronic lies not only mechanical systems, but also the trapped souls of multiple human victims, people who were murdered and subsequently sealed within its metal frame. Officially classified as Birthday Boy or Entity 222 by the United States Entity Department, Polar Pooh exhibits aggressive behavior when exposed to certain visual and auditory stimuli, particularly anything related to Walter Graves, the alleged mastermind behind these atrocities. For the first time, we introduce the wolf level, as incidents remain relatively scarce and localized. However, the series has only just begun. The possible involvement of Harold McCoy, along with the potential existence of other, even more dangerous supernatural entities than Polar Pooh, could escalate the threat level in the future.
Angel Engine.
In the universe of Angel Engine, humanity faces catastrophe from the very beginning. The planet is in complete decline. Natural resources have been exploited to their absolute limit, and wildlife has nearly vanished, leaving humankind on the very brink of extinction. In a desperate act, humanity prays for a miracle to save them from their impending doom. Their prayers are answered when an angel descends from the heavens, sent by God to offer salvation. The Archangel Uriel, However, instead of showing gratitude for this divine intervention, humanity commits the ultimate betrayal. They capture and imprison the angel within a machine known as the Angel Engine, intending to extract from him an infinite source of energy. This machine not only symbolizes humanity's arrogance and insatiable ambition, but also represents a direct and unforgivable sin against God and the natural order. The consequences of this act are devastating and irreversible. The angel, trapped in eternal suffering, remains confined for decades, unable to escape, condemned to endure ceaseless torment while his divine essence is exploited to create artificial miracles. And yet, despite everything, this angel harbors immense compassion for humanity. Even from his captivity, he desperately attempts to warn us from the future about the looming disaster. As foretold by the angel, a malevolent entity will arrive to bring about humanity's final destruction. This being is none other than the Antichrist, an entity prophesied in biblical scripture as the ultimate adversary of both humankind and God. Its purpose is to deceive, manipulate, and lead humanity down a path of complete annihilation. This entity is extremely dangerous, taking on Uriel's form to deceive humanity, disorienting both the audience and the characters within the story. It acts immediately, infiltrating the highest levels of global power, igniting a devastating and unnecessary war, one that will trigger a global apocalypse, plunging the world into absolute darkness, chaos, and destruction. Dr. Guelph Ernstman is the mastermind behind the Angel Engine. He embodies coldness, greed, and the complete loss of humanity in the relentless pursuit of scientific and technological advancement. With absolute indifference to the suffering of others, he conducts experiments on voluntary human subjects, individuals seeking a better future, without any regard for the moral or ethical cost. In truth, these volunteers are likely nothing more than disposable test subjects, destined to undergo inhumane experimentation or be sacrificed in the name of progress. They are mere pawns in a much larger scheme, one whose ultimate purpose is to challenge the divine at any cost, showcasing an alarming level of human arrogance and cruelty. In the end, Earth is reduced to a desolate wasteland following the war provoked by the Antichrist. The few remaining survivors struggle desperately to stay alive in a hostile environment infested with abominations, creatures likely spawned from failed experiments or the mere presence of the Antichrist itself, making survival an almost impossible feat. Even more terrifying is the fact that this demonic being is everywhere, watching, waiting for someone to make the fatal mistake of looking directly at it, an act that would mean instant death for anyone unfortunate enough to do so. Do not look at the sky, or you will be consumed. This world is nothing short of a living hell, and all that remains are the shattered remnants of a doomed humanity, struggling to endure threats beyond their comprehension. The universe of Angel Engine presents a full-scale apocalyptic scenario, placing it at the god level of threat, though still beneath Gemini. And here's why. Unlike in Gemini, in this universe, humanity still has a chance to reverse its fate. If Uriel were to be freed, he, despite everything, would still be willing to help them, for his love for humanity remains unconditional. However, achieving this is far from an easy task. Alright, that's all for today. If you'd like this series to become a main section on the channel, don't forget to support the video as much as possible and share it with as many people as you can. That being said, drop your thoughts in the comments. I love reading them. Also, make sure to follow me on my other social media platforms, where I post exclusive short-form content you won't find on YouTube. And most importantly, a huge shout out to the channel members. Seriously, thank you so much. If you'd like to become a member, just click the join button next to the subscribe button to unlock tons of perks and exclusive emojis while supporting me. If you're interested, join in. I'll be eternally grateful. And remember, this video was made by a cat, and cats can't talk. Thanks for watching, take care, and see you soon.